Welcome back to the Real with Joseph Lappin. I am Joseph Lappin. You guys having a great Monday afternoon. If you're new here, please like, subscribe, and share. I really appreciate that on the way in here. Shout out to all the new subscribers and everybody who's commented along. We had a great show yesterday, awesome show, one of the best ones we've had in a while. Had a lot of new viewers, a lot of people leaving comments, and so it was awesome. And I appreciate you guys. And yeah, shout out to you guys. Um, I got some feedback today from some people that tuned in to watch the show, and I really appreciate that as well. So yeah, a lot of people watching the show, and I'm meeting more of you guys. So I appreciate you guys. But yeah, obviously Brown season has begun. With training camp starting and wrapping up, and now we're finishing up the last preseason game this Thursday night. Obviously, the big headline was the quarterback competition between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. We've been covering it here at length for the last month, especially, and the Browns made it official today. Deshaun Watson was named the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns for this upcoming season. Now, obviously, a lot of people don't expect him to finish the season as a starter just off of past history, how he's played. Yeah, knock on wood, nobody gets hurt, but he's had an injury concern, and just kind of, you think the Browns would want to see Shedeur play at some point this year to make an evaluation on because, you have a draft coming up when you have 2 first-round picks, which is projected to be a decent quarterback class. And obviously that could change, but um, there's a lot going on there. And so I'm not surprised the Browns were going to name Deshaun the starter. I told you guys for the last month after that day where Todd Monken spoke to the media and said that Deshaun or Shedeur was going to get all the 1 reps in that camp practice that day. And then literally less than an hour later, they flipped it to Deshaun Watson. And I remember I came up here and I told you guys, A, there's something wrong there because when you heard Todd Monken that day, he said that somebody came and tapped him on his shoulder and said that, basically to flip it for Deshaun Watson, get all the 1 reps. And I remember I told you guys, and I remember I had another coaching on the comments as well who, said, number one, those practices are pre-planned. Your coaches meet every morning. They go over those practices. They script the practices and get it ready. They know what they're expecting, and they know what's going on. They know everything. They keep track of all the data and who's throwing reps with the ones this day, that day. So when that incident happened right there, excuse me, that's when I figured, you know what? Yeah, this has been predetermined. And that's been rumored for a while. Some of the local media here in Cleveland has been telling people, you guys on their airways for months. I know Jason Lloyd was one of them that they were hearing at the owners' meetings. It wasn't their opinion. Okay. It was what they were hearing at the owners' meetings and stuff that, Deshaun was going to be their starter. And so once that happened that day, that told me that, yeah, it was predetermined Deshaun was going to be starting, that this was never actually a real competition. Well, I don't want to say, but let me clarify. I think it was a real competition, but I think the Browns came into it leaning one way, pretty heavily, right? And I think they were only if Deshaun went out there and was, literally just terrible, or Shedeur is just so like great. All right, and I thought Shedeur had a really good camp. I thought Shedeur had a better camp than Deshaun in a preseason. I thought he was more consistent. I think he has more momentum with him right now with the team and just his energy. Like we heard yesterday. Jeremy Fowler's report of ESPN, people in the organization say that his aura and his presence has really made an impact in the building. Just his confidence he has, I think, which I've always said is his best attribute. But I think ultimately Deshaun Watson for them was always going to be their guy. Now, to me, I've always said the only reason why I think you could start Deshaun Watson over Shedeur, because Deshaun has no future with his organization. After this year, his last year of his contract, they're not bringing him back. He's 30 years old. He's had these injuries. I mean, there's no future with him in here in Cleveland, right? But with Shedeur, obviously he has a lot of upside. He's gotten better. You could tell this offseason, just watching him, just the little things in the pocket, the stuff he does in the pocket. Always get the ball out quicker. There's something there. You at least want to see what you got. Can he be a guy for you moving forward, right? And so, he's the only guy on that roster in the quarterback room that has potential to be a future quarterback for you. So, to me, it's like, okay, what other way? Why would you put Deshaun Watson out there? The only way I would put Deshaun Watson out there over to Shedeur is because of this. And I've said this for a while now, for a month. You have a rebuilding offensive line. You have a new head coach and a new system. You have rookie wide receivers, right? You have a lot of new, but a lot of change, especially the offensive line, though, right? So, Quinton Judkins is coming back off that injury. So you're trying to get him up to speed as the season builds on. right, and get him back up to where he was, which I think he'll elevate to even higher level than he was last year. I think he'll be an elite back in this league. I really do. And so, I look at all those factors and I say, you know what, if Deshaun is not my future asset, or could be, like Shedeur is, then I'm going to protect my future asset and protect the future of my organization, because right now the Browns, they're not in a position where they're going to be winning a championship anytime soon. They're competing for an AFC North title or going to making the playoffs, maybe even. Maybe they'll shock the world this year and make the playoffs. But right now, you look at the roster, I think the lack of depth and just the youth, really, and just they're a new coach. They're kind of in a transition, and they have been for the last couple of years. But now they're really in a transition. It's year one of Todd Monken. I think you're going to see some ups and downs, but I think overall they have a good thing they're building. They're doing it the right way through the draft. They're building out their core, the foundation in the trenches, right? And they got some great skill players they brought in this offseason. They're doing it the right way. I thought the Jared Verse trade, if you're going to trade away Myles Garrett, getting Jared Verse is great. Pairing him with Carson Schwarzenegger, you have two elite guys on defense that are young. That could be your building blocks, right? You kept Ward around. He's from here and loves the Browns and understands what it means to put on that helmet growing up in the area. So you have a lot of great things going, but you still have a rebuild you're doing with their offensive line. And, to me, I'd rather put the guy out there in Deshaun Watson that can let him go out there and kind of improvise a little bit, and then probably have to run around a little bit more in the first couple of weeks and maybe take some hits more than he should. I will say the offensive line did look better this week, but I think they're still going to be a work in progress. I think George Warwick will get them there. But to me, let Deshaun go out there and run for the Wolves, and let Shedeur continue to develop and do his thing, and put him out there once it's a little more stable. So then you get a more fair evaluation of him. And I've used the examples all the time. I think where the Browns have always failed as an organization and why they don't develop a quarterback is because they've never done it the right way. They throw their guys out to the Wolves immediately. You look at other organizations like the Chiefs, they had Patrick Mahomes. He sat for a year. How'd that work for him? Worked pretty good. Lamar Jackson sat right away. That worked pretty well for them in Baltimore. There's plenty of examples of that sometimes it's okay to sit and to develop. And I think Shedeur last year, in that situation he was in with the four quarterbacks and I don't think he really got the proper development he needed early on in the season and from start to finish. I really don't. So I think Todd Monken is trying to really help this kid get up to speed and get him up to where he needs to be. And I think he and Shadeur's working his ass off, and he's got a great attitude about it, you could tell. And I think he's setting a great example in the building. He's the last guy out there always every day, him and Taylor Green doing extra stuff after practice. So, he's doing all the right things. And I think for Shedeur, this isn't a bad thing either. And I'll get to more of that in a minute. Why this could be actually a good opportunity for him down the road. And kind of what I've been talking about right now, that Shedeur really could use this as an opportunity to develop more. But also the Browns shot. I think I'm cutting out a little bit, my bad. But the Browns, I think are trying to get him a fair shot. And, I would hope, because again, I go back to where the Browns, I think, have messed up. Like I said, they've always thrown their guys out to the Wolves right away. And I think the one guy they really messed up with was Baker Mayfield. You look at Baker's last year in Cleveland, he was hurt. Obviously, different circumstances, different time of their career than Shedeur, but somewhat similar in terms of where I hope the Browns learned that lesson about actually setting your quarterback up to succeed, putting him out there when it's, when he's ready to go, and you've done your best as an organization to put the right support around him so where he could be successful and flourish and grow. And they didn't do that with Baker. They threw him out there when he was hurt. After he took them to the playoffs and shown some things, had a really good year in 2020, had a great year. And, they threw him out there hurt. And in my opinion, they did a really good job helping him out. And they forced him out because they wanted to get an evaluation on him. But to me, it's showing you enough. But you couldn't get a good evaluation on a guy if you didn't put him in the right spot as an organization to be successful, which they didn't. He wasn't healthy. And, it was an unstable year. And unfortunately, it went the way it went. But you saw what he became once he got the hell out of Cleveland and got to a good organization with the Rams for a pit stop and then to the Bucs. Guy got paid, and he's played pretty well since. So, I think the Browns, this could be a good opportunity for Shedeur. But again, some people look at this state and say, well, maybe this is what the Browns think of Shedeur, that he's not as good he's not even better than Deshaun Watson, right? But it may not be that. Todd Monken may really have that plan like I laid out just now, that's really his plan. You know, do I think they needed to waste everybody's time like they did last year, calling it a quarterback battle? No, but I think they do that to try to build competition within the run to push guys, not keep guys. It's not like Deshaun Watson's really earned anything in Cleveland. I mean, obviously he's getting paid like a quarterback one, but he hasn't produced like that, and he hasn't played football really in 2 years. And he hasn't played a full season in 6 years. So I think they probably used it a little bit to keep everybody on edge, keep everybody moving and motivated, keep working and getting better, like your job's on the line. But and it draws interest. Let's be honest, like that's what they're doing. So, um, but again, I think I'm not surprised by this, but I will say this: if you listen to my show yesterday, after Deshaun Watson's comments on Saturday about the the fans booing stuff, and I came up here yesterday. I said, listen, I understand Deshaun from a personal standpoint. He may feel a type of way. He may feel like he didn't do anything wrong in 20, when all those allegations came out that he in those situations. So he's obviously is at fault in a lot of areas, but whether he's guilty, what he was accused of or not, I don't know. The court said no, but we don't know. Only that, only he knows and the people involved. But ultimately, regardless of that, I think, and I don't dismiss that. Obviously, that's a serious thing, and it should not be taken lightly. But I look at the situation like this, right? Deshaun Watson, um, he probably could feel some type of way that he's why if he feels like he's not guilty, right? He feels like he's got his name's been kind of slandered, right? And people booed him or cheered when he got hurt, 2 years ago, which I didn't agree with at the time. I don't think you should cheer somebody when they're hurt. And again, it's just a game. I don't think it's that serious. But fans did what they did. They're not all fans. And here, Cleveland fans, I am one of them. I think we're the best fans in the world. And Cleveland fans put up with a lot of crap as well. So that's B. But I think with Watson, I understand why he was frustrated on Saturday, but I think he needed to have a little better awareness that in terms of public perception and all that, which he knows, like you can't go out and say those types of things like that, and you can't act like a victim because nobody's going to feel bad for you. And really what I think Deshaun Watson should have did was taken accountability for the bad performance. And, that just hasn't, I liked what he said better today. And Deshaun Watson spoke today to the media. And obviously this is probably PR cleanup. We get it. But if he would have said this Saturday a little bit more in terms of these terms, I think maybe it would have been a little better. Although, again, ultimately in the day, what's going to, like Todd Monken said, I thought Todd Monken said it best. You want to change things, go out and produce. But here's what Deshaun Watson said today after being named a starter and also addressing his comments towards the fans.
First off, I want to address the comments from Saturday after the game. I think just, human nature, just myself being very emotional, putting a lot of time these last 2 years to, get back and, spend time in this facility, in the city, meeting a lot of different people in the community. I thought I was going to get, a little different response. But, I think, my emotions got the best of me. My comments wasn't intending to go at any of the fans around in the city because there's been a lot of great fans that have been supporting me. My emotions got the best of me. I'm human. I take full responsibility of that. And, just moving forward, I want to make sure that I put the best product for the team, for the organization, and for the city. First.
Now, I don't have a problem with what he said today. I thought he said all the right things at the end there. Obviously the best thing you could do, and that's number one, you give credit to Todd Monken. That's what a good coach does. They go in there in a meeting and they tell their guys, hey, number one, you shouldn't say X, Y, and Z, but also, that's what you need to have in your mind, in your head. If you want to go out and actually, change things and win games or change people's perceptions of you and win games, or excuse me, I'm speaking ahead of myself. If you want to go out to change perception of yourself and have fans on your side, go out and win games. Go out and produce, like performance. This is a performance-based business and industry. You're judged by performance, and if you don't do that, your coach can lose their job, and you're not going to be a starting quarterback much longer. So, and obviously his leash is very short. So, I think Todd Monken, did the right thing by what he said after the game Saturday, and then also how he addressed Deshaun privately after. And you could tell that Deshaun obviously changed his whole tune completely. because before the game, Deshaun said in the week they asked him about that, possibly being booed, and he said, he goes, he said he didn't care. He didn't care about what people thought and all that. Well, clearly he did. He got in his feelings on Saturday, and it is what it was. And it was only 4,000 people in the stadium, so wasn't a lot of people there even. But shout out to my guy Bruce. He said, "Cleveland, this is for you." Deshaun Watson saying when he got the job today, all those boos going to be fun. Shout out to you, Bruce. Hello, Ladman. I think Sanders will be traded. 6 or 11, 7 or 10, maybe. Yeah, I said 7, 8 wins at best. Hopefully with Watson, Browns get happy endings. All right. Wasn't Watson just needs to be quiet and try to win week 1. Stop talking. What did he expect? Browns fans are tired and want to win. Stop crying, Watson. All the greats have been booed. Yeah, and it's a business. I mean, at the end of the day, it's part of it. And but it's a business. Like, it's part of your job to go out there and perform. And fans for support and pay for the product. And you're a professional athlete. You're not a high school athlete. You're not even a college athlete, right? Because those are kids still. But you're a professional athlete, and you're getting paid $200 million, which congrats to you for getting that money. But you got to go out and perform. And so that's something that needs to be on his mind. And I like what he said today, that he took accountability for what he said Saturday, but also, it's been garbage since I've been here. Like, compared to what they gave up to get me and all the hype when they got me and what people expected to get from me and who I was before, I haven't lived up to that. I haven't been a serviceable starting NFL quarterback since I've been here. He had a little stretch in 23 before he got hurt when they beat I think it was the Titans, and they played the Cardinals, and then that Ravens game everybody remembers. He had that little stretch where he played all right, and he looked like, okay, maybe he's starting to turn back the clock. Fortunately, he got injured and just didn't pan out. And I think the organization did a bad job when they swapped the coaching staff out after that season, when they made the postseason run with Flacco, or made the postseason. It made the end season run to make the postseason with Flacco, and they fired the staff, which I didn't agree with, because I felt like they had a good offensive staff that, what all they overcame that year of multiple different quarterbacks and left tackles, and still made the postseason. And then they brought in Ken Dorsey and the whole thing. And, and the offensive line wasn't very good that year. And, you let Bill Callen basically walk, and it was a mess. So I think the Browns did a bad job of 24 putting support and structure around him. They made some bad decisions, I think, going into that season, which is why they were a 3-win team that year. They earned that right, to be honest with you. They earned that amount of wins, not the players, but the organization, by not helping out their players, in my opinion, that year. And, I think he's never had that type of support as well in Cleveland. People could say, well, the Browns went out and trade for so-and-so and so-and-so, but you can trade for guys and all that. But I don't think from a coaching structure, and I've had Stump Mitchell on the show, who was a running back coach in Cleveland at that time, and Stump's told me many times since, that all Kevin had to do was call plays the same way he called it for Baker and every other quarterback, and coach Deshaun the right way. When Deshaun would make a nice play in practice, you don't need to glaze him, right? You need to hold him and be like, yeah, that was a nice throw, but we need to do this better, right? And that's where Todd Monken comes in. You can tell Todd Monken's the kind of guy where, good is not great enough and great is not elite, right? And what he's doing by that is he's always holding, well, how can we continually get better, right? How can we keep staying focused, right? You hear the tone today from Deshaun Watson, a lot different than we heard Saturday. Like, a lot more, I think, a guy that seems to be a little more focused now. Like, okay, this is all I can control, and this is all I need to be focusing on, is going out and trying to win games and playing well. They playing at a high level. So, again, after those comments Saturday, I came up on the show yesterday and I said I would probably move on, because my biggest concern right now, and still is I don't expect those boos to really go away, because if the Browns only if the Browns go out and win the first 2 games and play well and he looks great, then maybe that'll change coming back home. Maybe fans will be like, you know what, because we're winning, let's see if we can, ride this out. But I expect the Browns to be at least 1-1 coming back home. Okay. And I think there's fans that are looking to boo this guy now purposely. And I've heard there's been many people online, some of these, whatever you call them, influencers, whatever they are, on the internet, talking about, they're going to be booing Deshaun forever, and they're telling other people to go out and boo. You had Dan Orlovsky today. I thought this was one of the probably the most biggest reaction I've seen today, nationally and locally, was from Dan Orlovsky, They asked him on First Take today about Deshaun starting. Here's what he had to say.
That Deshaun is the guy.
I am shocked. I feel awful for the fans of the Cleveland Browns. I have no idea how you could witness what you witnessed in that press conference and it not be a part of your evaluation and decision. I think the world of Todd Monken. I think he's a great coach. I think the world of Andrew Berry. I think he's put together really good football teams. I have no idea how they can make this decision. I said if this was strictly a football decision, strictly football, 50-50. Start the guy you want. I'd be fine with it. Last week, I thought in preseason week 1, Deshaun played better than Shedeur. Week 2, it wasn't even close. Shedeur was markedly better than Deshaun. The performance this past Saturday by Deshaun was not good. It was candidly very poor. To have him have that interaction and make the comments that he made in a town, and Kimberly, you could speak to it better than I can, but like in a town, in a city, in a football fan base and franchise like Cleveland, and to sit there and be like, don't boo me, and it's more than just performance, the tone-deaf element of that, and then to name him the starting quarterback less than 48 hours out of it, I truly feel awful for that fan base, because you can tell the fan base really likes Shedeur and wants Shedeur, and whatever reason why, I don't care. They don't with Deshaun. I'm shocked. I thought there was no way that they would name him the starting quarterback.
All right, really quick, Kevin.
Now, he also went on later on to say that the fans should boycott the games, that they shouldn't go or watch games. So, strong reaction there from Dan Orlovsky, obviously very passionate. You know what he said there too, was if it's a football decision, keep it 50-50, right? But, and I understand that. And I mentioned earlier in the show, like I mentioned for shows previously, why the Browns maybe put him out there over Shedeur to start the season to set things up for Shedeur when you put him in there, let's say week 4 or 5, because you have that offensive line you're trying to rebuild. But after those comments Saturday, my concern is still the same I mentioned yesterday, which is, I just don't want the booing. The booing's not going to stop, and booing's part of the game. It's not that fans are booing, but it's like you have players on your team, other players getting asked about it. And I just think they becomes a distraction in the locker room. And if I'm Todd Monken, I can't have that. I'm a first-time head coach. I'm new here in Cleveland. I'm trying to, start a culture, build a culture here. I can't have these outside distractions, worrying about booing and all that. And also, not only that, I don't need my players rallying together against the fans, because that's not good either. That's actually really bad. So you have a lot of these young guys a lot of your team's young. A lot of your core guys you'll be counting on are first and second year players, third year guys. Jared Verse is new here. They don't need to be around this stuff. It becomes toxic in the locker room. And I just don't think it's a good idea to possibly have this happen. So maybe their plan is to play in the first 2 weeks and then put Shedeur out there week 3. I think the plan could be this: put Deshaun out there the first 3 weeks, right? Have that first home game back against Carolina. Maybe it goes how people think it's going to go now, and they don't win the game, or maybe they do, but there'll be a lot of booing, and let's say they lose. Then you have that Thursday night game at home against Pittsburgh on a short week. Then you insert Shedeur in there, right? But I think they're gonna. I just don't see a world where the Browns don't play Shedeur at all this year. You have to make an evaluation on this kid, because you have to know, is there any shot this guy can be our starting quarterback in the future? Because you have 2 first-round picks and what's expected to be a very good quarterback class coming up, projected right now. All right, obviously that could change. Whatever, blase. But a lot of the guys that went back to school that were supposed to come out last year, well, guess what? They can't go back after this year. They're going to be in that draft. And if some guys perform what people expect, you may have to make a decision, right? But you're hoping you don't have to do it. You hope the guy in-house is the guy you can go with on a fifth round contract, and he's already been your building for 2 years. That'd be great. That'd be the best case scenario. But you got to play the kid at some point. And not only that, you have a young team. Like we heard with Jeremy Fowler's report yesterday, what the building's saying out of the Berea is, the kid is what were the words they use? I wrote it down on my notes from yesterday. He has a presence and an aura, which you can already tell by watching him, right? And that feeds into a young team, the energy, confidence, right? That's what they need. They don't need all this other distractions and all that stuff. So, again, I think Deshaun Watson gave a better response today. Obviously, it was a PR cleanup, and I hope that he just stays focused like that. I give props to Todd Monken for kind of putting him in check a little bit over the weekend, doing what a coach should do. But, at the end of the day, um, I just think they're playing it's a tricky game the Browns are playing. And here's what I don't like. I think the Browns constantly, for years, have put their coaches and quarterbacks in particular in bad situations and jeopardy a little bit. Because what's going to happen now is if that gets to a point where the booing becomes a problem in the locker room, again, you just put a headache on your head coach's plate who you just hired, who's trying to build things here, and you just put all this stuff on his plate that he's got to manage all this other BS now that he shouldn't really be focusing on, and that your players shouldn't be focusing on, that your young quarterback sitting behind him shouldn't have to be answering questions about, right? But the Browns continue to put themselves. They like to play with fire. They like to play with fire, and they wonder why they burned the house down. So, okay. I hope they go about this. They're gonna have to Tom Munkin's gonna have to do a hell of a job. He's gonna earn his money right away here, and that's not because of obviously want to go out and win games, but that's a results business, like I said. But he's gonna have to manage some other things besides wins and loss. He's gonna have to try to keep everybody in check and keep everybody focused and not worried about that, and keeping the guys in the culture of that locker room, focus on the main thing, healthy, and not distracted, because no fan base or no player. These guys, when have you ever seen a home fan base boo their own starting quarterback? Like purposely, like just as soon as he steps out on the field, they start booing. It just never happens. Like they treat him like he's an opposition, like he's like a guy that left the city and went signed somewhere else, right? I mean, I saw a video today. Some people are joking and saying that when they introduced Deshaun Watson, it's going to sound like when LeBron came back to Cleveland and Miami. When has that ever happened anywhere where you see a home fan base boo their guy like that? Never. So, this is a different situation that we're witnessing right now unfold. And that was just 4,000 people in that stadium on Saturday. Let me tell you something. You get that whatever 60-something thousand in there, and he goes out there and throws a ball on the ground or throws a pick, they are going to be letting it loose because fans are on edge now. As soon as you call out the fans, they react. And when you have the media feeding it, like we saw there with the media's reactions, people sit and watch this stuff all day, it just gets people more riled up. So, again, the Browns, I don't think they've done a nice job putting Todd Monken in the position to be successful here. And you go back to that practice. I go back to that practice from 2 weeks ago where, he said somebody pulled him aside, tapped him on the shoulder and said, no, Deshaun gets the ones today. And it's just like, and it's just to have that mishap even like that with the media, it's just like, why? It should not happen. It should not happen. Functioning organizations don't allow that stuff to happen, right? And I like it what Andrew Berry's done the last few years. Like he said there, I like Todd Monken, I like Andrew Berry. But I don't know if I can put it on them because ultimately, at the end of the day, did these guys have the full time to do their jobs, right? Jimmy Haslam, are you allowing the guys that you paid to really make the decisions? And I know Todd Monken said that, he's going to make the decision, blah, blah, blah. But I don't. Do I think there was a decision even to be made? No. Like I said, I think for a while the Browns been leaning Deshaun Watson starting before the season. Just like last year. Remember I showed you Mary Kay's article? It was obviously like Mary Kay obviously puts stuff out all the time that she gets from the Browns, right? She's been, some people call her the Browns mouthpiece. I don't say it, but she's she's probably the most prominent known Browns reporter. She gets that stuff leaked to her by the organization before anybody and puts it out, right? But it's like I showed you last year. When she put that article out a couple weeks ago saying why the Browns should go ahead and just start, basically name Deshaun Watson a starter, she put the same article out last year about Joe Flacco around the same time. And I showed you guys, I told you, I said, it's coming. Once you see that article come out, they're telling you ahead of time what's going to happen. And that's what they did. They told you the last 2 weeks ahead of time, Deshaun Watson is going to be our starting quarterback, by the way. And, that's how they did it. They did it. It was a slow build up and they did it. And they knew they were doing that all along. And so, again, when I hear Todd Monken say, well, the player, I hear all these people saying, the players are going to pick who's. I've had people in the chat like, oh, that ain't true. The players are going to Monken said the players are going to pick who starts and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, in a nice fantasy land, sure. That ain't reality in Berea. Okay, that was never the reality. Okay, players weren't picking who starts, or all that stuff. People were floating out there for the last 2 months. That was all BS. Okay, they knew what they were doing all along. All right, they went in there. They still gave. They wanted to see what Shedeur would do in a competition, but they knew what they were doing all along. All right, and that's my opinion. And proven right. That's exactly what they did. What I told you guys they were doing 2 weeks ago and how it unfolded is exactly what they're doing. And even after Saturday and what he said, they still, like he said, 48 hours later, what Orlowski said, they still named that guy the starting quarterback. What does that tell you? They were not bluffing. They weren't changing nothing. It was predetermined, and that was their plan, and they were sticking to it. So, that's that. I mean, but here we are. But they got to manage this now with that locker room, and I don't like my players being asked about it. One of their teammates getting booed by the home crowd. On the road, obviously that's common. You should get booed on the road, but that means you're playing well if you get booed a lot of times too. But at home, that's not very common ever. And so now you got players in that locker, especially young guys, getting asked about it, and they even asked Shedeur Sanders about it. And what he had to say. Where's that? Give me 1 second. If you're just tuning in, please like, subscribe, and share. I'll get to some of these comments before I wrap up the show here in a minute. But where is Shedeur? Shedeur was asked about it on the sideline of the game Saturday. They asked him about it. Here's what he had to say. And I thought he'd give a great answer.
I don't really like overall, whenever the whole stadium like booing and stuff, like when the shot get in, because he going out there, he trying to put in work too. Just as being a person, like I don't really like that, and I don't really, respect that. However y'all feel is how y'all feel about an individual, about a person, but when somebody going out there trying to do their best, they don't really sit right with me overall. I don't really.
Now, I like his answer because I like that he stuck up for his teammate. I think it says a lot about the kid. But what I don't like about it is nothing that Shedeur said or did. I don't like that the Browns are allowing this to happen. That the Browns, their young quarterback and some of their young players, you heard what he said there. He thinks it's disrespectful what the fans did. I don't want my young guys thinking that about the fan base because I just think it's a good start. It's not a good. You're not going to build a healthy culture in a winning environment with that type of stuff going on, where the players over time may start to dislike the fans. You can't have that. That's not good. Because then when their contract's up, you think they're going to stay here, and the dollars ain't talking. They're going to get up and move out. They're out. Now you lost some players. It's just not a good function. It's not healthy. It's not real. It's not normal either. When have you ever seen your players at odds with the fans, the home fan, like this? And I'm not saying that's a problem right now, but it could be. Again, the way he answered that question, I thought he answered it in a great way. He should, he should back up his teammate. I thought he didn't give the right answer, but I don't want him getting asked that. And if I'm the Browns, I'm trying to get myself out of this right now because you're going to have more of these young guys getting asked these questions, and I don't think that's good. And I don't want my young guys starting to turn on my fans. So it's just not a good, healthy culture. It's not functioning. It's not functional. It's not healthy. And it's not what great organizations do. It's not how it's supposed to be done. It's not fun either. When you're not having fun, you're damn sure not going to win games when you don't enjoy what you do. When these guys go to that facility every day, they start to hate where they are and the fans they play for, or have a certain image, or idea about that because the organization's allowing it to happen, that's not going to be good for the long term. It's just not. You can't hate what you do because eventually you'll stop doing it, or you won't give it your all, or you'll check out. That's just human nature. So again, I think the Browns are going to have to do a hell of a job. And again, they put their first time head coach in a position and they didn't help him out already. So here we go. This will be only last for one game. Monken said for one game. We shall see if it lasts. I heard Watson stuck up today at practice. I'll get the Monken's comments here in a minute, peekaboo, but Monken said today it's not a game-by-game thing. So these experts are exaggerating. It is not that deep. Was Watson wrong? Yes, but no reason to obliviate all the BS. Well, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, Bruce. I mean, somebody obviously I have seen a lot of exaggeration today, but hello, darling. Hello, Grandma Patty. Donation. Oh, we got a donation in the house. Oh, yes, we do. Thank you. I appreciate your donation, Grandma. I love you, and thank you as always. Shout out to you. Travis going to make Watson look like a chop suey. The organization's determined to bring the brown bag over the head bag. They don't gotta be determined. Fans will just show up and do it. And that's like a ritual in Cleveland every year. Every year you see them brown bags come out. And you already know what time it is. It's GG's on the season. Beer 2, good to see you. Browns are tanking. Hey, you never know. I mean, we know the owner likes somebody coming out in this draft. Just saying. Anyways, Browns players are only there for the check. They don't really care about what Watson say. Players know when an organization is serious about winning. Being a Brown player is going to work at a call center. It's a job that pays those bills. Yeah, and you can't have that, Bruce. You know what I mean? That's not, when you're trying to build something, that's not fair to your head coach, A, to allow that, but also you're never going to build what you need to build to become successful. And you have all this young talent. You have a great core. I mean, you got guys like Carson Schwesker, all these young guys you got on your team going out having baptisms, the Christ, Cleveland for Christ events. I mean, they're doing great things in the community, and they're all in and doing it and playing their butts off and doing the right things. And you got this going on now that could come in and really poison your locker room. And you just can't have that. That's my biggest concern, is what you just pointed out. You cannot. That's not healthy. And you're going to lose guys in the end, and when you're not going to have a good team. So you'll be back to square one constantly, which is why they've always been back to square one. Like I said earlier, the Browns are the organization that constantly likes to play with fire and wonder why the house burns down, because they don't know they just can't control themselves. The Browns are not winning more than 3 games with Watson. If I were Shedeur, I would refuse to play when the team is 0-5 or 1-4, says Resurrect Mints. Yeah, I mean, I think Shedeur, though, has the right attitude. And I think Shedeur will be ready to play. And I think Shedeur knows that's his opportunity. And Tom Munkin said today when Shedeur came to the facility, he was he was smiling. He had a good attitude. And that's how he should approach it. All he can do is control what he can control. It is what it is. But, actually, I'm going to get to some of those comments from Tom Munkin here right now before we wrap up the show. But I appreciate you guys for commenting and tuning in today. Please like, subscribe, and share. But to kind of go off of your comment there, Resurrect Mints, we'll get to some of what Todd Munkin had to say today about Shedeur and why he made a decision. We'll start there. So this is Todd Munkin, why he named Deshaun Watson starting quarterback.
Fire away.
Why?
What's new?
Word is out there, Deshaun. Explain your decision.
Deshaun is going to start against Jacksonville. Took in the full body of work over the course of off-season to training camp to the games, the joint practice, and ultimately felt like to start the season on the road, Deshaun gave us the best chance to move the ball and score points. I mean, that's really what it's about. And felt that way going in the last game, but wasn't sure. And after we talked as a staff and after we re-looked at everything, we're going to go that direction.
So Todd basically broke it down like he feels Deshaun gives him the best chance to go out and score points for the offense to be successful. He also said later on that he believes kind of that Deshaun, with the operational things is a little more right now, probably based because of his experience, more experience in the league. But, and I think kind of what he's saying there as well is kind of what I was saying. I think what they could be thinking is, we also have a rebuilding offensive line. We're installing an offense, and this kid last year didn't get the development he should have got from when he was first rookie year. So we're kind of still developing him on the fly as well. He's kind of like a redo of his rookie year a little bit with Shedeur, and he's working his tail off, doing all the right things. So, I think I get it from a football standpoint in terms of if you're trying to set the young guy up to succeed, because, he did say it's not a week-to-week thing, but which probably means, don't ask me after the first game, but I'm sure they have a target date of when they want to make a decision and reevaluate, because again, they know they got to see Shedeur this year. And he was asked about that, again, where's it at? Just kind of the flexibility with that. Is it a week-to-week thing? Camp Justice asked him. Here's what he had to say.
Is this a decision that feels like maybe you're flexible with changing if things don't go the way that maybe you anticipate early?
I don't anticipate that being the case, but that's what we do. This isn't that question is not a quarterback question. It is everybody's position, right? Every single week we have to prove it, right? That's what we do. As pros, we have to prove it every week. It doesn't matter what position. Ultimately, we expect him to play well, or we wouldn't be starting him.
Now, what he said in the beginning is that basically he left the door open. He said, and he gave a nice, correct answer as a coach that we're not anticipating that. And obviously, got to try to say we like you said, we feel like he gives us the best decision to win and blah blah blah. Oh, we made a decision because we feel like Deshaun gets the best chance to win and blah blah blah. But he did leave the door open, and I think obviously they clearly had a plan going into this of what they're looking to do. I think they want to play Deshaun for a certain amount of the beginning of the season, and then put Shedeur out there. And so I do think he did leave the door open with that comment right there. That eventually they will reassess, like I expect them to, like I've been predicting. I think right now we'll see Shedeur by week 4. I think Deshaun will go out, play the first 3 weeks, and he'll have that first home game where the fans be booing. Probably, let's be honest, fans be booing. They may not win the game, and especially if they lose, and then you have a perfect opportunity on a short week to put Shedeur out there again on a Thursday night game at home on a national stage, and you could really kind of recatapult your whole season a little bit and build some momentum. So, to me, I feel like that's what they're going to do. But I feel like his answer right there obviously left the door open with saying that we don't anticipate that, but you never know. My last 2 clips I got of Coach Monken, I appreciate you guys for tuning in, is talk about Deshaun Watson and handling the boos and having some mental toughness and being able to work through that and stay focused. Here's what he had to say about that.
Building, decide who plays.
Todd, I know you said that press conference from Saturday from Deshaun wasn't going to factor into the decision, and I know you talked about how important mental toughness is in quarterbacks. So looking at the entire body of work, what makes you confident that he has that part of it for you guys right now?
Well, I said it yesterday, like he bleeds like we bleed. 22 months of working to get back, giving himself another opportunity for the Browns, okay? So that I respect. And sure, was he hurt? Yes. But I also said yesterday, okay, I don't like being booed either. I don't like when we jump off sides 3 times at the end of the game, okay? But we earned that, right? We earn our respect by how we play. We earn our fans, right, in terms of appreciation of the product we put on the field, and that's our job. So on one side, I 100% understand where Deshaun is coming from, but ultimately, the pros. I mean, we got to put on a good product, and we got to play. You got to pull your big boy pants up and let's go play.
And I think that's the right mentality that the coach should be sending the message, not only the quarterback, to his team. And that's why you heard Deshaun come out today with obviously a little PR cleanup, but also a different tone along with those lines. That's what you should be telling your team. Stay focused, block out all that stuff, turn your phone off if you have to, and stay focused on what you're paid to do. Ultimately, to be successful and to not hear that stuff and all that, you go out and do your job, which is produce and help contribute to wins. So I like the message he's sending there. I think it's the right message to send, and the only one he can send. But then you also talk about Shedeur Sanders and how he's going to keep him prepared for the season. As he's not getting number 1 reps every day, like because Deshaun's a starter, but how is he going to keep him prepared and up to speed? And I feel like his answer right here is along those lines that Shedeur, I think, knows he's going to get his opportunity this year.
I did not.
Todd, just with Shedeur, obviously Deshaun's going to get the lion's share of the practice reps as you work through the season. How do you work to get Shedeur reps in practice so that he can continue his own development, in case,
Well, that's a great point. I mean, we do have we have this week, a couple of days. We have a few days next week where we're still Browns on Browns.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll turn our focus the back end of next week and the following week on Jacksonville. So we still have reps where we're running our offense,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's where he'll get the development. The hardest part is, you are exactly right. Once we get into game week, Deshaun takes all the ones. So he's going to have to do a great job in individual, film study, and then when he gets opportunities to go against the defense, again, people run a lot of the same concepts, right? People run 4 verts, they run curl flat, they run flood concepts. That's no different what we run. So how are you going to play that out in your mind? What is that on the card that is exactly what we do, and then process and play it out like it's a real practice rep?
And yeah, there you have it. And so and he also mentioned it again. He said Shedeur was in good spirits when he got there, and he said he's a poker face. He's not happy, and I'm sure he's not happy. I'm sure he wants to play. Obviously, no doubt about that. But I think Shedeur, he's doing everything the right way. He's going about it with a good attitude. You hear about his work ethic, all the things he's doing. You've seen him after practice, right? He's doing all the right things. I think his time will come, and I think you will see him this year. And I think it'll, maybe be perfect timing. I don't know, no pun intended. But I think they got to get evaluation on him this year. I mean, Deshaun Watson has no future with this organization. So again, I think they've predetermined this decision. I think they're treating Shedeur kind of like a rookie again. I think they're kind of redoing the development that he didn't get last year. That wasn't obviously his fault. It was just mismanaged by a bad coaching staff. And so, I think that's a lot of it as well. That it's kind of like a redo of his rookie year. And Deshaun's kind of their bridge guy. So, because I just don't know. If they really think Deshaun Watson's going to go out there and lead this team to a postseason berth this year and to throw for 33 touchdowns and 8 picks and 3,800 yards or whatever, I don't know. So he looks like a serviceable starting quarterback in the league, or maybe good. I mean, I just don't see that happening. Nothing shows you that, especially with the injury history. It's a big risk to even bet on that. But and then obviously after what happened Saturday, I just don't and all the things I mentioned today about how that could really affect your locker room. They're clearly, they've had a plan and they're sticking to it. So, and I think for 2 years in a row now, they won one of the training camp saying how we had this big quarterback competition and blah, blah, blah. And they were leaning one way all along. So they were leaning with Flacco going into last year, and they were leaning with Shedeur. Now, eventually, obviously, Flacco got pulled eventually, and I think that's what's going to happen with Deshaun, and Shedeur will get his shot. And we'll see what happens. But we'll give him a chance to start this year. Yeah, they got to give him a chance to start. Shedeur won 3 out of 7 starts. Dart won 3 out of 11 starts. Ward won 3 out of 17 starts. Shedeur is better. Dan's in the house. He said the Browns are 78 and 135 since Jimmy Haslam has owned the team. For those counting at home, we have had him as an owner for 13 seasons, meaning they are averaging 6 wins a year with him as an owner. He has had 8 head coaches and 20 quarterbacks. Look no further. 20 starting quarterbacks. Look no further. And not only that, Dan, I heard a stat today that the Browns, since he's owned the team in 2013, are the second worst, most losing franchise in all of sports behind the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Jaguars, they'll actually pass the Jaguars probably by week 4 this year. So they're gonna be the most loser organization statistically in all of sports since he's owned the team. So hopefully they turn that around. But yeah, that's an interesting stat that he's about to respond to row. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Please like, subscribe, and share as always. And shout out to all you guys. You want to call, leave your thoughts on this decision by the Browns and what your thoughts are, when you think we'll see Shedeur, what's your predictions for the season. Call into the show now, 216-532-5550. Leave a voicemail. Again, 216-532-5550. Call and leave a voicemail. We'll play it live on the next show. And yeah, shout out to all you guys. Like, subscribe, share all that good stuff. We'll see you the next one. I'm out of here.